Testing, check 1 2. 1 2. Okay, we are here with William Faith. Alright, William Faith who played in Christian Death, Mephisto Walz. Am I pronouncing that right?
Waltz, yeah.
Yes. Shadow Project, Anima Mundi, Sex Gang Children, Faith in the Muse, Conflict, The March Violets, Christian Death. Oh my gosh, I could go on and on. So, I met you in the 80s, then we reconnected. How come you didn't tell me any of these except for you played in Faith in the Muse CD? You didn't tell me any of your background. I was like blown away. I went online, I had to do research, and then when at that time I was living with my friend Katie, she was saying, that's a big band, Faith in the Muse. How come you never told me any of this? You were very humble.
Well, the thing was, I mean, when I first knew you, this was back in the 80s at McDonald's protests and stuff like that, and I remember, we were hanging out back then, and that was before all that stuff. So, a lot of these bands didn't happen until later. So I remember we lost touch for a while, and then I bumped into you at the Crypt at some point in the late 80s.
Gosh. The goth club, the Crypt.
Yep, back when you went by Jay Bloodsucker.
Wow. That's crazy. Yeah, because my hair was really, really bright. It's from the Verukers album.
Yep.
Yes. Wow, the Crypt.
Yep, and then so then after that we lost touch again for a while, and then next time I saw you I think was at like Showcase Theater years later.
Yes.
And so all this stuff kind of happened in between.
Right. All right, let's go with Christian Death. You're on 3 different recordings from Cleopatra from Christian Death.
Yep.
Okay. What was working with Christian Death like and playing live shows?
Well, we didn't do live shows. The Christian Death was just recording. And so that was, I was in, at the same time that was going on, I was in Shadow Project, which was Roz and Eva's other band. And so the idea with the Christian Death stuff wasn't really to play live. It was just to record new Christian Death material. It was the first stuff since the Ashes album in 1985 that they did. And also it was kind of just saying fuck you to Valor, who was the guy that stole the band away from Roz.
Did you care Christian Death?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, so
I like both. I like the UK too.
I think a lot of people do, but if in our case, it's very much 2 camps, and I was definitely on the Roz side 100%. So.
Okay, I met Roz. I don't know if I know the correct year, but it was I think 1990. Terry from Ipso Facto, when it just opened, she drove me to. She told me that there's a new band called Shadow Project. So I went to go check it out, and I was talking to Roz about the only theater paint on the back. There was a dead cat, and he told me it was a found dead cat, and he said he was a vegetarian. Him and what's her name? Eva. Dude, I understand Roz really passed away, but did Roz stick to his vegetarian diet, or did he change?
It was back and forth, really. I mean, he kind of went through an era where he really got into crass, and he had a jacket with crass on the back and the whole thing. And around the time that he was doing a project called Premature Ejaculations, he was kind of really into the Yes Sir I Will era of crass, and so he was really into that. And so he was experimenting with it at the time, trying to hold on to it, but I don't think it didn't last ultimately.
Then I remember, this is crazy, he came to a psychic TV show a long time ago. He came with a Motorhead shirt on. I was going, what?
Well, Roz loved all kinds of music. That was something we connected on a lot, is we listened to everything. It didn't matter from Kiss to Motorhead to, really just relaxed ambient kind of stuff, all over the map.
Then you did play live with Shadow Project.
Yeah.
So how about Sex Gang Children? Did you play live or just did recording?
One show. It was all of one show. I was in the band for, it's really a blip, it was just a second, but it was about 6 months that it was after Shadow Project, and Andy Sex Gang was looking for a new band, and I had a lineup already that I was doing another project with, and so we talked about it, and we just decided that my lineup would become his band, and so we helped him out for, we did a show together, and then we did some other appearance down in San Diego, and then after that he went back to England. So
you came from the 80s punk rock scene. How did you get into the whole goth stuff?
Well, and not many people.
Or death rock. We call it death rock.
Exactly. And that's the whole thing. Not a lot of people these days understand, but back in the early days when we first found this stuff, it was all punk rock.
Yeah, we were all together. You'll see death rock was a punk rock show, a punk rock was a death rock show.
It was all one thing, and even then,
Los Angeles.
the shows that you saw together. I mean, there was like Joanna Went, Fear, and Christian Death on the same bill. You know, it was like all over the map. You would see hardcore bands and what we back then, before the term goth was even around, we called it death rock or morbid, you know, kind of styles. And you would see all these bands together. I mean, 45 Grave was really a punk rock band, but kind of got mixed in with that stuff later. Same thing with the TSOL Dance With Me. I mean, that's to me one of the most goth albums there is.
Yeah, we call it death rock.
Yeah,
That's
absolutely.
TSOL back then. I mean, the early TSOL.
Yeah, big time. And some Social Distortion was also really dark. I mean, there was that whole mix of stuff, but it was all punk rock. It wasn't pieced out the way it is now.
How do you see the punk rock scene difference now from the 80s and now?
I've mixed reviews of it. On the one hand, there's got to be that energy. There has to be, you know, people out there, you know, saying these words and communicating these messages, and that it still connects with people, and people still find a path to activism from it. I think is really, really important. So I'm glad about that. The thing that I don't care for so much is how sort of stratified it is, and how it's just you're kind of into this, but you're not into that. You know, so it was much broader back when we were, you know, first finding this stuff, and so I kind of miss that, you know. But
I miss the art.
yeah.
The album, you open the album, all the fucking art and the lyrics, they don't type in computer, they just fucking write it all freehand, but amazingly like art. I miss that.
100%. Couldn't agree more.
Okay, and then you relocated to Chicago from Los Angeles. Why did you move there?
Love. So really the best reason. But no, I mean, I was in LA my whole life, born and raised. I was born in downtown, and then but in 2009 I reconnected with an old flame, and that led to me moving to Chicago, and I love it there.
So the stuff we see on the news, is Chicago really that dangerous with gangs and people dying or drive-bys?
As with most things you see on the media, there's always a slant to it. The city is, I will say that it's the most segregated city that I've ever been to and lived in, where it's the north and the south side don't even really talk to each other, and the south side is primarily people of color, and so it's really, really sort of broken up that way.
It's loud.
But beyond that, the city itself, it's nowhere near the kind of just don't believe the hype. It's not the way it's painted.
How do we, as a human being, how do we deal with youth street violence? How do we deal with that?
Create opportunities. I think another big part is actually going into communities and listening rather than coming in with an answer.
Listening to them.
Yeah, and talking. You know, the whole thing. One of my primary criticisms of a lot of activist movements is they kind of white knight the whole thing. They walk in with a plan, you know, and without really understanding the people they're trying to help, you know. And so when you come in, you should be listening rather than talking. Yeah,
I like that. Yes, listen to them. Now, this is very interesting. Tell us about your permaculture course and classes.
Well, I got you to thank for that. I remember it was a very, very cool thing you did, and just, I remember you being like this for as long as I've known you. But at some point we were hanging out somewhere, and you handed me a video cassette, and you said, "Hey man, I recorded some stuff off TV that I thought you might like," and there was a bunch of stuff from PBS, and you know, some art pieces, some punk, you know, documentary pieces, and one thing that was on there was this episode from PBS Global Trekker, and it was on these Mexican punks from this group called Tierra Viva that were doing this thing called permaculture, and they were going from village to village and teaching people how to treat their water, you know, because it's already got sewage in it, and they were working with these other Aztecs doing this thing called cob, which was, you know, covering these cement walls so the children aren't breathing the dust and getting sick. And I was like, wow, this is incredible. And what I loved about it is it was such a positive thing. And so I went, and as soon as that was done, I Googled permaculture, and all this stuff came up. And then so I ordered a book, read that, then I went and took a one-day course and really loved that. And so then I went and took the whole permaculture design course, the whole, like, I was there for like almost 2 weeks, or over 2 weeks, learning about this at this intentional community in Tennessee called The Farm that was really incredible. And so straight from that, I got active in the permaculture movement, and that for me was the most practical and positive affirmation of the anarchist upbringing and experience that I'd come from. So it was the first time that I saw something where we weren't telling people what not to do, we were telling people what they can do. and it was about opportunities. It was about looking at a problem and not seeing it as a problem, seeing it as a solution. So flipping the script on the whole thing. And it was, instead of telling people, you shouldn't do this, you shouldn't do this, you shouldn't do this, it's like, hey, here's what I'm doing. If you're interested, let's have a dialogue or a conversation about it. And that changed everything for me.
And now you're an instructor. You give classes and courses and stuff.
Yep.
How many people have you taught so far?
Wow. Trying to put that together, I can't even say. I mean, it's a lot now. In between primers, full design courses, advanced courses, and speaking at colleges on radio and all that stuff, it's a lot. It's been. I mean, I've been doing it consistently since 2007.
Wow. Okay, during that time, I think it was 2007. This is during showcase when Anima Mundi was playing Showcase Theater.
Right.
Do you remember doing a workshop at the Southern California Library? No, you were on a panel. You were on the panel in front of the whole anarchist crowd.
You invited us, and we did. Actually, we did two. I did two panels. That was one that was on permaculture, and that was with a bunch of us. It was me and Greg Eisenberg and Ziggy and Crispin and Jeff, I think. So it was the Anima Mundi crew plus some family people from way back when, and then also there was an anarchist panel, and you had different strands of anarchism talking. I think you had John Zerzan doing like the anarcho-primitive kind of thing, and then you had me doing anarcho-punk, and so all different people. Yeah, I remember those.
Yes. So back then, Showcase Theater punk show was going on. Then there was a whole different LA anarchist activist scene going on. Why was it so hard to connect them both? Why was that so hard? We tried so many times and we failed. Why?
That's a good question. I mean, the only way that I can see it is there's some people who are into this stuff for the music and kind of only the music, and they can kind of take or leave the politics of it, but the music really speaks to them. Other people, they're into the message and they don't care so much about the music, and so I think there's a little bit of a tension there, but there's also a lot of us that both I think were equally important.
At the same time, I think music brings people together, so you gotta have a balance.
Absolutely.
It can't be just all serious. You gotta have fun, have a music, so bring people all together. That's why the 60s movement was so powerful. Music, poetry, literature.
It was positive. It was positive, yeah.
Now let's talk about Showcase again.
Sure.
Anima Mundi. You guys released a full album. It was amazing. What the fuck happened? Why'd you guys stop?
Well, I think it was one of those things where, we were all we came together and did this project, and we put everything we had into it for a good while, and then what really happened is one of our collective got pregnant, and so she became a mom, and that kind of started it. So then she and her husband, they wanted to move to Portland and kind of start this family there, and so that slowed us down at that point. I think we did a few more shows while that was going on, and then afterwards we all kind of just scattered to the winds. It was like this very intense thing for a short period of time, and then kind of came apart. In many ways it was like this very micro crass kind of thing where it was like we didn't know how long it was going to last, but we knew that we were going to give it everything we had for the time that we were there.
And why was Anima Mundi against slam dancing, moshing and stuff?
It was funny. You find out stuff later about bands, but in this case, that was me that was pushing that. And it wasn't even so much that I was trying to dictate and tell people what they could and couldn't do. In my case, I wanted, rather than looking to the system and looking outside and at politics, I wanted to start within the punk scene. I wanted to say, hey, let's think about what we're doing, because for me, I thought I was always turned off by the fact that slam dancing was an immediate result. You could just count on it. It happened all the time, and no one thought about it. You just did it. And then I was sick of seeing girls at the back of the hall holding their boyfriend's jackets, and while he was like hand the jacket off, and he's going and having fun while she just gets to sit there holding a jacket. And I thought that was really fucked up. And so I wanted to ask questions. I wanted to point fingers. I wanted to stir the pot a little bit. And so that's what that was about. And our decision was, if people started skanking, we'd stop playing. And there were always bands on either side of us that was just like, do it for this band, do it for that band, but we don't want that while we're playing. So it was our decision. It was our decision to say, we're doing this. You're out there. Let's meet in the middle and kind of think about this for a minute. That was the idea.
I remember during MySpace time, it was fucking crazy. Like comments after comments and comments.
People fucking hated us for it. Yeah, we took a lot of shit, but it was.
I'm glad you took a stand on that.
Yeah, no, it's a fight worth fighting.
The whole machoism and stuff.
Yeah.
On certain shows, actually, it does happen. All the tough people will be in the front, just with the shirt off and moshing. Certain shows though, different scene.
And sure, certain bands and stuff, but it's always been that way, and that was kind of the point. Is like, let's think about something. Let's try something different. You know, let's think about this in a different way. Let's not just do the same thing over and over again. Because for a lot of punks, it's just like, you're listening to your parents' music, man. You know, it's like, let's find something yours. You know, create something of your own inside this. It doesn't have to be the way it's always been.
We came from the 80s time. What's your opinion about this whole technology change now? Well, like, we could text on our phone. We could even talk on the phone now. Look at videos on the phone.
It's a completely different era. I mean, I'm old enough now that I admit that I can't imagine what it's like to have grown up with the internet, to have had that. You know, how different your life has to be, all your experiences. You know, it's a very different time. But that said, there's a lot of cool stuff still going on out there. The accessibility, the fact that you can have access to so much stuff now. I think it's very different and very cool. It has, I mean, every side has its upside and its downside. But for me, you know, of course, I wouldn't trade, you know, my upbringing for the world. You know, I love the collecting vinyl and everything that went along with it, you know.
All these years for being in the activism scene, the whole activist punk scene and stuff, since the 80s, has it changed? Or did only technology change?
Things have definitely changed. And I think that was one of the things for permaculture that permaculture introduced to me that changed my perception a little bit, is that when I was focused so much on, you know, fighting the next battle, you know, whatever the next thing was, and I was always a single issue cause of some sort. If it was, you know, ending vivisection, if it was getting the U.S. out of Central America, if it was ending apartheid, whatever, you know, the cause was, it was later on that I was just getting the feeling that the next one was already lined up for us. Okay. And because we were so single focused, there was no one looking at the whole picture. And so permaculture was what kind of got me out of that real single issue mindset. I was saying, we don't need to change single issues, we need to change the mindset. We need to change perception and get people thinking that, you know, re-empowering people to do for themselves, you know, to work for their communities. Everyone's thinking about the world, no one's thinking about what's right outside their own nose.
I don't know if you know this, but once in a while I go to your page, but I don't leave comments, but I read stuff. I notice you got fucking smarter. So I gotta ask you some questions.
Please.
Okay. What are some of your inspiration, like favorite books? What do you like to read, or favorite author, and so your inspiration?
These days, I mean, so much of the stuff that I read is less fiction. It's a lot more practical stuff. So it's things like, you know, permaculture books, really. Bill Mollison, David Holmgren. The One Straw Revolution. There's a lot of, you know, very inspirational books about how to view the world, how to think about things in a different way that I've gone to. For fiction, I mean, I always go back to my big three. I still love Edgar Allan Poe. I still love H.P. Lovecraft. I still love Edward Gorey. So those are my favorite, like, enjoyment books.
Do you have any favorite, like, podcasts or like a motivated speaker, or like anything you listen to, you go, wow, it's fucking inspiring?
I do tend to listen to a lot of permaculture-based podcasts, so that's a lot of stuff about what's going on in the movement, and so that's where I think most of the stuff I listen to is that.
Okay. You have a whole lot different, like, you know, though I would say more open-minded on music and stuff. What are some of the favorite stuff you listen to?
God, it's all over the map, really. I used to say that, you know, you catch me on the right day, it can go from Kiss to Motorhead to Enya to, you know, all kinds of classical and world music, a lot of folk. You know, it's really all over the map. But my meat and potato stuff that I keep coming back to, if you'll pardon the term, is the stuff that I grew up with in the very beginning was like 70s glam. So I love David Bowie, you know, Stooges, New York Dolls, Kiss, T-Rex, Queen, a lot of, you know, that stuff. And then later in the late 70s, I started getting into what was at the time kind of called new wave, but, you know, early Devo and Gary Newman, Ultravox, B-52s, and then that led me to Adam and the Ants, which led me to hardcore. And so that was the next thing after that is me and my best friend when we were kids. I remember we bought Nevermind the Bollocks the same day, and then that was followed by Dead Kennedys, Fresh Fruit for Rotting Vegetables, and then all the albums that followed straight on from there.
All these years since the 80s, how did you not burn out? And how did you continue to stay in the activist movement?
I did burn out. I definitely did burn out.
How'd you handle it?
Not well. The 90s, just, basically it was like, I think 89 was like the end of it for me. It was right at that time where I kind of had this. I was also, I mean, like a lot of us at the time, there was, a lot of drug use and stuff for me back then. And at the end of the 80s, I felt very defeated. And so I think at that point I hit my very personal point where I just said, I'm sick of waking up angry and hating the world.
Video's gonna cut off soon because it stops in 20 minutes.
No worries.
But I just want to say thank you for the interview. If somebody wanted to go to your website or anything, what do they look for?
God, which